All right, good morning and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ben Zelakovitz. I'm one of the co-founders of Get Quorum, and we're here today for our Ask the Experts session on hybrid meetings. Couldn't be more happy to be here. Lots of friendly faces, certainly online, and a few people here for breakfast, although I'm sure they came mostly for the free breakfast and not to hear me speak. The session for today can count towards 1.0 CPE credits. At the end of the seminar or at the end of the webinar, we'll be providing the attendee list to the authorities, and they will be providing you with the certification for your credit. So that will be sent to you online after the discussion. In about a second, we're going to go through our normal housekeeping that we use to start off all of our AGMs, as we're trying to give you both a sense of how the audio visual works for a hybrid AGM, but also how voting would work. Fortunately for you all, and because we're supposed to learn stuff today, it won't be just me telling dad jokes the entire morning. Mark, thank you. It won't be just me telling dad jokes. We've brought in the experts all the way from Ottawa. So we'll get into introductions and whatnot in just a second. But first, we're going to throw it over to our expert moderator, Amanda. Amanda, if you would please run everybody through the housekeeping.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you. I am Amanda Bustard, and I am the Get Quorum host for today. Before we get started, I'll review how you will participate in this meeting. For the best experience, you should have joined via Google Chrome if you're on a computer or laptop. And if you're on a mobile device, a tablet, or an iPad, you should have the meeting open in the Zoom app. This will ensure full participation throughout the meeting. And when you join the meeting, you would have had the option to join audio by computer and possibly allow Get Quorum access to your microphone. This is a crucial part of participating. For if you want to be a part of the open Q&A session that we'll have, you have to make sure that you accept those prompts. So please do so. If you are experiencing audio issues, you can refresh your browser and accept the audio prompts again. You can click on the audio settings on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. And if the issue persists, please make sure you contact me through the Q&A box so I can provide you with technical support. Otherwise, you may have to just leave the meeting and come back in as well. So one way that you will participate in this meeting is through the virtual hand raise. At the bottom of the screen, you should see the raise hand icon. And if you've dialed into the meeting, which I don't think we have anyone, but you can also press *9 on your keypad to raise your virtual hand. Once you press that button, your virtual hand will be raised, and if you click it a second time, it will be lowered. So if everyone could just go ahead and find that raise hand button and click on it so I know that it's working properly. You will be using your virtual hand raise to move or second a motion to participate in Q&A. And if we had an election, you would do that, use that for a board nomination as well. So thank you for everyone who raised your virtual hand. You can now press it again to lower it. Next to that raise hand feature is the Q&A feature. If you click on that icon, a box will open allowing you to type in questions at any point throughout the meeting. And also, as I said, if you need any technical support related to your audio or to voting, you can also use that Q&A box, and your panel will be monitoring it. I'm not sure if today they will, but they will respond to any questions that will be in there, and the board will receive any questions that were submitted after the meeting as well. So in a typical meeting, we would have motions that require a Zoom poll. After we've received a mover and seconder, we would go ahead and launch that poll. And it's basically like the all in favor. And for a hybrid, we would have the in-person attendees use your hands and we would collaborate the two results. We don't have anything for motions today, so we won't go ahead and use that. But the most important thing to think about today is our live voting. So during the meeting, we will use the Get Quorum software. And again, as I said, if you've joined on a computer or laptop, voting will take place on the sidebar on the right-hand side of your screen. You should watch for the vote tab on the bottom right-hand corner. It will flash when the voting begins. And if you don't see that sidebar or you're joined via the Zoom app or on a mobile device, you will just have a secondary way that you will access your voting. And that will be you won't see the vote icon on your computer. You will see an email that will come through or the email that you joined us with that you can click on once again to take you to that web browser. Once you're there, you can click on the vote in your meeting portal link and it will show you when the vote is live. And I'm just going to put a test vote up now so that we can see what that looks like. And you can go ahead and cast your vote. So in the room, you should have access to that meeting portal from the email that was sent out. And I've just started a test question, so you can go ahead and cast your vote now. Again, if you're having any difficulties, you're not seeing that vote icon, you can go back to the email that you joined us with or the email that was sent out letting you know that the vote is now live. You can make your selection and make sure you hit the next button in order to confirm your vote. You may also see the votes available of how many options you have and the time of when the vote closes. So that's everything for me. I'm going to turn it back over to Ben. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the meeting.
Thanks, Amanda. We'll look forward to hearing the results of that super important question that we're warming up with later on towards the end of the presentation. All right, so because we're trying to learn stuff today, we're going to go through in excruciating detail, roughly 76 slides, and this is slide number 1. Only kidding. We're going to whirl through some of the fundamentals and the basics quite quickly, cover some trends, and then dive into the details and challenges and benefits of hosting hybrids. But first, perhaps the most important part is joining me today on our panel all the way from the nation's capital with a hockey team that may actually squeak into the playoffs for the first time in many, many years. None other than Nancy Houle and Cheryl Wood from DHA. Nancy and Cheryl, welcome. Please say hello.
Good morning, Ben. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Thank you for being here. Cheryl, hello.
I'm going to do a quick intro for her. We thought we'd do that to keep it short and sweet as well. It is chilly here. I think it's minus 23 where I'm standing right now. So I hope you guys are a wee bit warmer, a little bit more south. We're just delighted to be here today. So DHA is a law firm serving the Eastern Ontario region, and we partner with Get Quorum for all of our virtual meetings. And in the past couple of years, we've been doing a lot of hybrids. So we thought we would be able to add maybe some info today to the fantastic session. So Ben, thanks for inviting us to join.
Thanks, Nancy. Needless to say, I'm super happy to have Nancy and Cheryl here, not just because they increase the average IQ of the panelists significantly, but also because they are the absolute experts. As well as Nancy, you've also met Amanda, who is our moderator extraordinaire, joining us from Alberta. But behind the scenes here, we've got Dennis and his team from MCR. They are supporting our meeting with the audio visual, and we'll be diving into a lot more detail about how that works as we go through the presentation. So let's get going. All right, so some trends and what we are seeing in governance meetings across North America. At this point, Get Quorum hosts meetings in Ontario, Florida, and then a smattering of states across North America, states and provinces, I should say. It is commonplace now that the majority of condominium and HOA meetings use some form of technology, whether you're powering electronic voting before a meeting, during a meeting, maybe you're doing manual voting, but you're broadcasting your meeting. The majority of condominiums now are embracing technology for all of their governance needs. What we are seeing is that technology is, particularly in the province of Ontario, I would say almost every condominium makes use of some form of technology to power their AGM. And more of these condos are exploring hybrid meetings. So with roughly 3,500 meetings hosted last year, we can say with confidence that the majority of our customers continue to remain in a fully virtual format. Many are going back to in-person, but we have a growing pool of customers that are looking to host hybrid meetings. Nancy, I will ask you, What are you guys seeing in terms of the demand for hybrid meetings? Is it sustaining? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think we are seeing a little bit of growth right now. We still have a vast majority of our meetings virtual. We have a handful going back to in person, but even the ones that are going back to in person, after they've done a couple of in-person tries, they're seeing their numbers are just not quite as high for attendance as they were virtually. So even those who went back in person are now getting that drive to look at the virtual option, and particularly as the demographics are shifting as well. As people are moving out of condos and a different generation of condo owners are moving in, they're going to want to see more and more online. So I think for the next 5 to 10 years, we might see a virtual hybrid shift.
Very good. We concur. Amanda, if you could move us forward on the slide here. This is our inverted pyramid here with what we're seeing as demand for hybrid meetings on the bottom, in-person meetings in the middle, and then, as I think both DHA and Get Quorum would agree, the majority of meetings continue to be fully virtual. Moving along here. Okay, so it wouldn't be a Get Quorum meeting if we weren't able to share really exciting stuff like data and statistics. One interesting tidbit we've noticed is that attendance at hybrid AGMs are majority online, with approximately 80% of attendees would choose to join a meeting virtually. This is a surprise to absolutely nobody. As Get Quorum, if you think about it, Get Quorum's business is facilitating AGMs, and not even I want to go to an in-person AGM. Why go to an AGM in person when I could do the dishes? I could chauffeur my kid around. There are all sorts of things, but all joking aside, considering AGMs in your communities, it's helpful to keep this metric in mind. If you've got 100 people in your community and you expect 80 people to show up to your meeting, it's simple math for you to figure out what percentage of the people will show up online and what size of indoor venue do you need to provide for those people to that are showing up in person. Nancy, does that hold true with you? Do you guys see about an 80-20 mix, or what have you observed?
Absolutely. And even for the ones, as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, where we had that push to go back to in person from, I'd say maybe a small minority, or like saying, feeling, oh, okay, we feel like we're disenfranchised a little bit, we want to go back in person. Well, then we had a really strong push from those who didn't want to give up the virtual option. So we were still having a larger attendance virtually. And one big thing too that we talk to our customers about is the accommodation portion of the virtual meeting, the ability to offer it to individuals who are mobility impaired, who are visually impaired, who are hearing impaired, and people who are snowbirds, as simple as that, right? It really does increase the ability of all of your owners to be in attendance when you've got that virtual option, and then throw in your hybrid and you've got everybody satisfied.
All right. So with most people online, some people in person, I think we're now ready to move on from our exciting statistics and get into some of the basics of what a hybrid meeting is. So if we can move the slide along, please, Amanda. There we go. It may seem obvious. A hybrid meeting is one that takes place both in person and online. Believe it or not, I came up with that definition all by myself. The key caveat to a hybrid meeting, though, is that all attendees must be able to vote and participate equally, regardless of whether they are present virtually or physically in person. To that end, next slide, please, Amanda. There are 4 pillars, really 5, but 4 pillars to hosting a great hybrid meeting. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to break down each of these pillars in a little bit more detail. The number 1 pillar, while they all look equal on this slide, the number 1 pillar is actually audio-visual. Without consistent and a strong plan for audio-visual, you will struggle. So we'll talk in greater detail about that. Easy and secure voting, keeping track of who's got proxies and all the nuances of voting. You want to have a solution for that. You can choose vendors or you can endeavor to do it by yourself. Attendance and meeting registration. You got to have a plan to figure out who is there, who is in person, who's online. Are there 2 people, 1 person online, 1 person on in person from the same unit? You got to be able to figure all of these things out. So quick and accurate attendance is super important. And then lastly, equitable participation, making sure that those that are in the room and those that are virtually attending have the equal opportunity to participate. Very good. So we used to say hybrid meetings were complicated. Something that perhaps you should be hesitant to try. Well, in the post-pandemic world, we've now hosted enough meetings that we can confidently say that these meetings can be very, very effective, and they can be very effective, particularly when they're executed by people that know what they are doing. So part of being a board member or a property manager, or as my wife would say, as a husband, it's really important that you understand when you do and do not know what you are doing. And if you do not know what you're doing, which my wife says I most often don't, it's important to surround yourself with people that do. So we are here to help you understand all of these pillars and the challenges, and particularly we'll zoom in on these and help you understand what to focus on. So equitable or balanced participation, voting, registration and attendance, chairing a meeting is also critical. And then lastly, audiovisual. We're going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do you ensure equitable participation and across the meeting? The tendency is for in-person attendees to get the focus. It's almost written into the Condo Act that each community should have at least one owner that, if given the opportunity to do so, will hijack the meeting for their own agenda. It's also true that 100% of the time, this owner actually shows up to the meeting in person. These things need to be planned for. They cannot be allowed to hijack your meeting with their agenda. This needs to be discussed beforehand with the board, with your chairperson, and with your property manager. And once you've got a plan for it, you got to stick to it. Other suggestions we've had is to alternate taking questions from in-person attendees and virtual attendees. Of course, if everybody's there online, that might get a little skewed, but having a plan for how you will address questions from both virtual and in-person attendees is crucial. And then lastly, you want to have a suitable platform for hosting your meetings. We're using Zoom. So no board members that are cost-effective or cost-minded. Your free trial of Zoom or your corporate instance of Microsoft Teams probably won't cut it. You're going to want to have a piece of software that is suitable for a meeting of your size. And then lastly, you want to set these ground rules early, both in your pre-meeting and then at the start of the meeting. You want to let everybody know that is in attendance how you will be ensuring equal participation. Nancy, are there anything that I have missed, or how do you guys treat your audience? How do you make sure everyone feels welcome and has the opportunity to participate?
Sure. It's a really important thing to be thinking about. At the very beginning, when we started doing hybrid meetings, we would have our virtual chair, because we always have two chairs. We have a virtual chair and a live chair. And so we would have our virtual chair off-site and our live chair in person. Well, slowly but surely, we tested a bunch of different options, and we've realized that both the virtual and the live chair need to be in person. We can see each other, we're in the room together, we can communicate, so that we're always making sure that the live and virtual attendees are getting equal attention, and also that the virtual and live chair can signal to each other when someone needs attention on the other side. So we're both in the room, we're looking at each other, we're working together constantly. And then we also set those ground rules, as you said, very early on. While our online chair is going through the demonstration like Amanda did just a few minutes ago, our in-person chair is circulating in the room, and we have our sound and video locked off for in-person versus virtual. So you're each giving instructions to each different group of attendees so they understand how you're going to work together throughout the meeting so everybody can hear, see, and dialogue together effectively.
I'm so glad you're here, Nancy. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Moving along. All right. So we've covered off equitable participation. It's discussed before the meeting. Everyone gets a framework of how it's going to work, and then it's up to the chairperson to make sure that that is the case. Now let's move on to meeting registration and attendance, something that is equally important. So you have to have a plan or a platform so that you are tracking in real time the attendance of the meeting. Now, attendance at a governance meeting is way more complicated than counting the people that are physically present in the room. counting the people that are online and assuming that that is your count. You've got to factor in proxies. You have to factor in multiple owners from the same unit attending. All of these things need to be accounted for. So you have to have a strategy to track meeting attendance in real time. You have to account for online and in-person attendees, and everybody and every unique unit that comes into the meeting. You have to clearly identify how are they going to vote. Have they voted via proxy beforehand? Are they going to revoke that proxy? Are they voting live? Are they voting live electronically? Are they voting live, but you're using paper ballots? The variations on this are numerous, and with a solid plan in place beforehand, it shall not be a problem. Doing so incorrectly, though, might land you in front of the CMRAO or the authorities, and we don't want that. So to aid this, a little selfish plug here for Get Quorum, we've built what we call the registration desk app. And so this app is used at the meeting desk prior to coming into the meeting room. And what this app does is two things that are pretty cool. On the right-hand side, what you can see the screen doing is it's tracking attendance. So as your attendees are entering the in-person meeting room, you are checking them in. You are issuing them either a ballot, a paper ballot, or they can scan the QR code on the screen, get access to their electronic ballot, or you can even issue it to them electronically. This ensures that you know exactly who is in the room and that they are prepped to vote and that they have been properly registered. So this app we find is a great way to keep yourselves organized. Can be installed on any device, on any mobile device, on your laptop or desktop, and is included in part of all of our service offerings. Then on the left-hand side, our customers are becoming more and more willing to do things on their own, though this is also part of most of our service offerings, is the actual voting results. So you can run, launch, and scrutinize all of your votes on the registration desk app, and everything is there nice and tidy for you, and it will clearly identify all the attendees, who's online, who's in person, and the mechanisms that they're using to vote. Nancy and Cheryl, how do you guys, I know you guys make use of the registration desk app. You guys have any other tips or tricks or things that you do to make sure that you're keeping a good understanding of who's present at your meetings?
I'm going to punt this one to Cheryl, but I'll just say before I let Cheryl speak about our experience with this, we will not do a hybrid meeting unless we're using this app. I think that's a good way to start it off. Cheryl, go ahead. Over to you, because you're the one that's primarily taking care of instructing everybody on this one.
I fully agree with that. Before this app came out, at our hybrid meetings, we had to cross-reference everything in advance. You had to look at all the proxies that came in, have a comprehensive list, and it was just very cumbersome to go into the meetings. So this registration desk app has been a lifesaver for these meetings, allowing you to scrutinize. And I will talk in a few minutes about some forms or ballots that you should have present when you're doing the check-in. So one of the things that we find with the registration desk app is it will trigger you to tell you that someone has a proxy on file. And so it will allow the owner to revoke the proxy, but we also have a form that we have owners fill out in the person when they're registering to revoke proxies, just so you can have that paper trail with you when you're using the registration desk app. But yes, we don't go anywhere without this app anymore.
Thank you, Nancy and Cheryl. You know, I'm reminded of a similarity between Nancy and Cheryl and myself and my business partner, JJ. And so those that know JJ and I, some would call JJ the brains and the silent partner that sits behind the scenes. And I am, I guess, the muscle. And I'm starting to get the sense between Nancy and Cheryl that there's a bit of that dynamic here as well.
She's
so
our tech guru. There's no question about it.
There we go. All right, Amanda, if we can move forward. So we've covered off for you how to ensure equitable participation across all of the people in your meeting. Now we've covered off how do you make sure that as they are entering the room and as you are launching your governance meeting, that you've got your arms wrapped around everybody. You know who they are, you know how they are attending, how they are voting, and what to expect going forward. So now we are getting to the penultimate or the most important part of most governance meetings is the actual vote. So we're going to do a live vote in a second. But first, let's kind of go through some of the things you need to factor into your thinking when planning on your meeting. So obviously, ensuring the accuracy of voting is crucial to the integrity of your meeting. Nobody wants to get dragged to court for not doing things properly. It's a reality that a small percentage of AGMs will end up being audited. So having a voting system that you can defend and that can be audited is a very, very good idea for boards and for property managers to cover their booties, I guess you could say. So with a voting platform, or you know what, let's get into what are the specific things from a voting perspective that you need to be mindful of. Number one, who has submitted a proxy or an advanced ballot prior to the meeting? Are all owners eligible to vote? Are they eligible to vote on all matters? Are there owner-occupied elections? All of these things need to be factored into your voting plans, all of which are complicated by having people online and in person. Are there weighted ballots? We've seen even in Ontario instances where ballots need to be weighted. How are in-person ballots going to be cast? How will you integrate these ballots with your virtual meeting? So as I've said, you'll want to make sure that your plan here is well thought out. You don't want to be one of the small percentage of meetings that get contested and not have a great way to provide audit and to provide defensible results. So having said that, Amanda, let's do a vote.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to go ahead, just as we did in our practice vote, I'm going to go ahead and launch our live vote. It should, again, show up on the right-hand side of your screen. You should see the vote icon flashing and the new vote presented to you. If you're not seeing that, or if you're on your mobile device, you'll just have that web page. So the email that is going out that says you should cast your vote now. When you click on it, it will take you to your meeting portal web page. And I see votes that are coming in, so I think everyone's doing quite well. If you need any extra assistance, just send a message in the Q&A box or put your hand up. I'm sure somebody in the room would be able to help you out as well.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm also tremendously grateful for you being here. Let's move on. If you have any questions for how voting works, feel free to stick those in the Q&A, but let's keep moving on. So at this point in time, I'm going to, believe it or not, keep quiet, and I'm going to defer completely and entirely to Nancy and Cheryl, as they are the absolute experts here on the how-to of chairing a hybrid meeting.
Great, thanks, Ben. I'm going to turn over to Cheryl in just a couple seconds, and she's going to go through sort of the hands-on keys to success that we've put together here. But I think just to reiterate at the very beginning, what I was saying at the very beginning, it's really important to ensure that you do have, in our view, the two chairs, if you're going to follow the type of format that we're doing, in the same room so that you can constantly dialogue and make sure everybody feels engaged in that meeting. That's the most important thing to a successful hybrid meeting of, well, aside from the 5 pillars you're talking about either or earlier, Ben, is to make sure people walk away from the meeting feeling that they had the opportunity to engage. Because if you want to have another hybrid meeting in the future, you have to make sure that both the participants in each session feel like they got what they needed from that meeting, right? And as you were saying earlier, Ben, there's going to be that one person who wants to come in and try and take control of the meeting, and you have to make sure that your chairs in both forums are ready for that so that you can move forward effectively in whatever venue that person ends up participating and getting all your votes and stuff in as well. So Cheryl, why don't you go ahead with our keys to success that we've discovered through our approach?
Sounds good. Yes. So as we've been navigating the hybrid meetings, we've come up with some keys that you need to keep in mind to allow for reasonable participation. And it's important to remember that hybrid meetings, in order to comply with the act and say it's a hybrid meeting on your notice of meeting, you have to have all participants being able to reasonably participate. So when a condominium corporation comes to their manager and says that they want to have this type of meeting, the manager carefully consider what supports and information they need in order to conduct a hybrid meeting. If you're going to just go and put a laptop on a table so that people can attend virtually and just listen into the meeting, then it wouldn't be a hybrid meeting. It's an in-person meeting where you're allowing people to view the meeting if they can't make it. In order to have the hybrid, you need to invest time and money. No doubt hybrid meetings are more expensive in order to ensure that you have the proper technology to facilitate it. So planning ahead, at least 2 months before the meeting, you need to work out the logistics. You need to ensure that you're looking at what in-person venue will support both the in-person and the virtual. You need to be able to have strong Wi-Fi or strong cellular signal in the venue that you select so that you can properly include and bring in the hybrid or the virtual portion of the meeting. You also want to make sure that you have a projector with a screen. I see one behind Ben there in the meeting room right there. So a nice big screen so that the in-person meeting can see the online portion as well. You can also have a large TV screen. Large TV screens do work as well. And you want to also consider accessibility for the venue, making sure that the people attending in person can properly access the meeting. Then you want to determine what platform that you're going to use for the virtual side of the meeting. It is possible to use Zoom without a back office platform, but it's a lot more back end work for management and the meeting provider. So as Nancy mentioned earlier, we don't do any hybrid meetings without using the Get Quorum platform because it streamlines the back office side of things. So it also helps with the collection of proxies, the registration desk app that we talked about, and voting during the meeting. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that you make sure that your meeting package sets out the type of meeting and the options for participation so that your attendees can plan ahead. And then the day before the meeting, you want to make sure that you've entered all paper proxies into the system being used so that you have clear confirmation of what proxies you have, and you can cross-reference that at registration. You have the arrears list set and the registration list or app ready. Next, we have another key-ish thing to keep in mind is strong technology. The theme today is pretty consistent. Audio and visual is key for hybrid meetings. You need to ensure that you either, as a manager, have the sufficient technology or you bring in someone that does. The technology that we find essential is a strong camera and microphone. At DHA, we've been using the OWL camera, which is a 360-degree camera, and a microphone, which allows participants online to see the meeting room. And the OWL tracks the people that are speaking in the room, so it just pans towards the speaker to allow the online participants to see whoever's speaking in the room. We also, as I mentioned, a projector or television screen, and then a dedicated computer to run the technology. And this is one, we have a separate computer that we use to link the microphone, the camera, and the large screen and projector. And this is to make sure you don't inadvertently share the back office platform on your screen. You want to keep that separate. And then we have computers for the live chair and the virtual chair as well. And then at the meeting, you want to make sure that you're there well in advance to set up and test the technology. You want to make sure that you have ballots and voting cards for the in-person voting and that you have a careful registration process to ensure that people can only vote in one in one format. So if, as Ben mentioned earlier, if someone co-owners, one's in person and one's virtual, you have to be able to account for who's going to be casting that vote. So we already touched on, I'm going to skip the co-chairs for a minute, but the careful registration, that all ties in where you want to make sure that you use an app or a registration system that cross-references and only allows voting in one platform. Nancy touched again on the co-chairs. This is one of our keys to success, is having both the live meeting chair and the virtual chair working together to ensure that both the live and the virtual attendees can participate effectively in the meeting. It also helps streamline the voting process in the meeting because the virtual chair can mute the room and make sure that they provide the information to the virtual attendees while the live chair is giving the instructions to the in-person attendees. So Nancy and I run a lot of these meetings together, and we find it very helpful to be able to see each other and play off each other during these meetings. And then there was one more slide. The next slide that we have just sets out some of the ballots and forms that we make sure are used in the meetings. The blue, orange, and green ballots there are your typical ballots for elections and voting on bylaws. And then the purple ballot is the voting card. So when an owner holds proxies, they would get the card to show how many procedural votes they have during the meeting. So they would hold up that card to ensure that the chair knows that they have multiple procedural votes. And then the last ballot is the ballot in the middle that I was talking about. It's actually not a ballot, it's a proxy, excuse me, a proxy revocation form. And we use that form to have a paper trail when someone revokes their proxy when they're attending live in person. So that is the quick overview of the keys to success. Back to you, Nance.
Sure. So just one quick thing we did is we went shopping at Home Depot, which was really fun, and we bought a toolkit, a triple toolkit on wheels. So it's called our hybrid meeting in a box, and in there lives the owl, the microphones, the projector, 3 laptops with a total equivalent of I think 6 or 7 screens. We got the add-on screens. So it does look a little bit like a spaceship at the front of the room, but it works well. And everybody so far, knock on wood, has said they feel really engaged after these meetings. So far, so good. Fingers crossed.
Wow. Cheryl, Nancy, thank you so much for that. I hope we all can appreciate that between Nancy and Cheryl, they have probably hosted more hybrid meetings than anybody else in the country, realistically speaking. And so for them to impart their expertise, I think is tremendously valuable. So thank you for that. So I think we cannot underscore enough how important audiovisual is to the success of a hybrid meeting. So if, for example, you were to select an inadequate setup for your meeting, it can have an awful experience for your in-person attendees or your virtual attendees. We've had customers, believe it or not tell us that they are going to host a hybrid, and do not do this. If you're a customer of ours, please do not do this. Let us know. So we've had customers that have not told us that they're going to hold a hybrid meeting, and then, you know, half an hour before the meeting, they say, surprise, this is actually a hybrid meeting, and the only thing that we're going to use to run the hybrid meeting is this, a laptop. So that may work for you, but it also is very likely to not. And so what we have designed for you here are 3, I guess what you could say is the bare bones that you could use for a hybrid meeting. You're a couple dozen unit condominium, you want to hold a hybrid meeting. You know, you need Wi-Fi, you need laptop, and you need speakers. Next, which is akin to the AGM in a box that Nancy and Cheryl would be highlighting, is what are we calling it here? The standard setup. And so in addition to the laptop and Wi-Fi, speakers and mics, you've got a projector, you know, a PA system, and maybe some iPads. And then what you see here for today's meeting, and you can't see behind the camera, obviously, is we have a full-blown audio-visual vendor that has come and that has set up multiple microphones, camera. They've got a tech table. They've got some smiling people here to help make sure everything goes smoothly, a screen, speakers, and they've tied everything in together and put a bow on it so that Get Quorum and or everyone else attending the meeting simply needs to show up and turn on Zoom. So that is the setup that we are using for today. If we can move on to the next slide here. Just simply for educational purposes, as we'll be throwing this up on our website, this diagram here will help you understand everything that goes into holding a hybrid meeting, from how your moderator needs to be able to wrap their arms around everybody in the meeting. And what I mean by that is understanding who is in person, who is there virtually. Somebody, that's the Cheryl in the DHA meeting, in a Get Quorum meeting, that's Amanda. in the meeting when you're doing it yourself. You got to figure out who that person is, but one person needs to be behind the scenes, making sure that you understand everything. And then from there, you've got to have your voting system tied into your webinar, and that will track your attendance and facilitate a smooth meeting. We can move on to the next slide, please. So I think Get Quorum has finally solved how we want to hold and how we recommend holding hybrid meetings. We try to maintain a standard here that we are the absolute best in class at everything that we do. And so we came to the realization that we simply cannot go to your meetings and also do a good job with all of our other meetings. So what have we done and how have we partnered here? We have partnered with MCR. I'll share their details with you guys in a little bit. But essentially, the way that hybrid meetings now will work, if you were to call Get Quorum, is we will provide you with everything that we normally do. So your meeting notice, your registration desk, your live voting, your pre-voting, but you also get the horsepower of MCR showing up at your meeting, setting everything up. You do not have to worry about anything. You just need to be there on time and do the testing as is instructed, and everything else is provided to you. So to give you a quick overview of what the package comes with, you get a mixer. I don't know what that does, but it's important. A web presenter, HD camera and tripod. That's what you're looking at me on. Multiple speakers, microphones, 22-inch laptop or monitor, and a technician on site for setup beforehand and to break it all down. AV cables. Essentially, it's soup to nuts. You can't ask for anything more, and it is a high quality, highly interactive experience that you will guarantee good interaction, equitable participation across all of your audience. So this is how Get Quorum going forward will be powering hybrid meetings. If you call us and you're in the GTA, we'll say this is the solution that we have for you. If you are in the Ottawa area and you want to hold a hybrid meeting without any hesitation, I highly recommend that you use DHA, as they are the industry and thought leaders in the space. So hopefully this will give everyone a good sense of how we're doing things moving forward in the hybrid space. We're going to go to questions in just a second. So lastly, before we move on, I'll kick it back over to Cheryl and Nancy, but some do's and don'ts and best practices here. So do make sure that you've done your research and you pick the platform that is appropriate for you, your community, based on the size of your community and your technical needs. Make sure that you've thought very carefully how you are going to handle audio visual. Are you a board member or a property manager? Do you want to hold a hybrid meeting? Yes. Do you then also want to be responsible for audio visual? I can guess the answer, but that is up to you. Make sure you've got someone on site that can help you with some tech issues. Make sure you have planned for equitable participation and that you plan for your hybrid meeting. And then dress rehearsal the day before, an hour before, highly recommended. And then on the don'ts, don't exclude any attendees, okay? It's not okay to have someone online that can't participate. They have to be able to vote. They have to be able to ask questions. And then on the virtual side, same thing. Make sure that you're ensuring participation across both your in-person and your virtual attendees. Nancy, Cheryl, have I missed anything on best practices before we conclude for today and move to Q&A?
No, I don't think so. And I think I should also add that one big difference, I think, between the Eastern Ontario region, obviously, and the GTA is our meetings are typically going to be smaller than the GTA size. So looking at the, the professional system that you guys have talked about, if you've got 1,000 people in attendance because you've got a multi-$1,000 condo, having a larger setup and a more professional setup is likely going to be your better option in any event. Our setup is really good for up to about 150 attendees in a room. But once you go over that, hiring a professional audio visual is probably where we'd be going as well.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, Amanda, if we could go on to the last slide here. So firstly, before we go on to Q&A, I just want to thank everybody for attending. Those of you that are here in person, thank you. Hopefully you'll eat some more of the breakfast before you go. And for everyone that's attended virtually, thank you very much. MCR, thank you for being here. Contact information is on your screen. But as I've said, if you're calling Get Quorum looking for a hybrid meeting, we will provide you an all-in-one streamlined way. MCR will power the meeting, but Get Quorum will be your single point of contact. And then, of course, in the Ottawa region, DHA's contact information is up there, whether it's for hybrid meetings or any of your legal needs. I definitely recommend Nancy. So at this point, let's get into questions. Are there any questions online or in person? If you're in person, if I could ask you to step up to the mic here and we'll show off. Yeah, we'll show off how that works. So just a quick look at how a in-person question might look at one of our meetings is the camera will move away from me, and there you are. Maybe you can tell us your name, where you're from, and how we can help you today.
My name's Simon. I'm a condo manager of a condo downtown right at Spadina and Queen. And yeah, my board and I were discussing trying to have a hybrid meeting for our last AGM, and we were very close to, but all the audio visual parts to the meeting were kind of like, I don't know, this might not be so smooth. So at the last second, we decided to keep it all remote. But we're very much considering going towards hybrid for the next AGM. And we do work with Get Quorum, by the way. So my question is, I think you said during your presentation that going forward, if we call or if we email Get Quorum about a hybrid meeting, going forward, you have a new package where I think you're going to show up and just do the whole thing for us, essentially. Did I get that right?
You got that exactly right. So if you were to ask us for our hybrid recommendation, we'll provide you with our standard service, and then the MCR powering all the audio visual and all the infrastructure you see here. Everything is provided to you, and it's all Get Quorum will act as your point of contact. Obviously, MCR is accessible for questions, but it's designed so that it's a single point of contact for the customers to streamline the setup from beginning to end. So for next year, hopefully you'll give us a shot and we'll give you a nice smooth experience.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up to that. Is that okay? Pretend we have our AGM in a week. Are you guys doing that like right now?
Yes.
Okay, good to know. I think that's it. And I guess obviously we'd reach out and then get a new quote for.
It's an add-on. So, you know, some customers are subscribed, some customers are transactional. If you're a subscription customer, you simply add it on. If you're a transactional customer, then yes, we'll give you a new quote.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks.
All right, Amanda, get your results ready while we maybe take some questions from the virtual crowd. All right, so we've got a question from JM Morin. What is the relative length of a virtual versus hybrid versus in-person meeting? So I'll give my thoughts, which are that the hybrid and the virtual meetings are typically abbreviated. And I think our average meeting time is somewhere in the 80 to 90 minute range. In-person meetings, I think, are the wild card because there's no way to know if you're using technology to speed up like your voting period, for example. So Nancy, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I think I agree. I think the hybrid / virtual portion makes the meeting shorter. Your in-person is going to be what it's going to be. It's going to depend on the characters and how that meeting plays out. And the virtual and hybrid decrease the length. I have not found it at any point in time to increase in length.
I would agree. Next from Sonia. Roughly speaking, what is the difference in cost between a virtual and a hybrid meeting? How much more expensive considering all costs involved, 2 chairs, equipment, meeting room, hybrid? So I'll answer from Get Quorum's perspective, and then maybe Nancy, you can chime in on how it works in the Ottawa region. So the added costs would be for the MCR package that Get Quorum will provide you is in and around $1,200. So you've got your Get Quorum base fee, and then about $1,200 on top of that. Now, whether or not you have a party room that you don't need to shell out for, or a venue that you have to pay for, that I can't comment on. But purely from an AV perspective with voting and all the stuff that you absolutely need, you're looking at an added cost of about $1,200. Nancy, do you want to comment on what that might look like working with DHA?
Sure, and we're in the same range roughly. We're anywhere from 1,000 to a couple of times we've had to go as high as 2,000 if the meeting went 3 hours or so, given that we had some really contentious issues going on. But yeah, anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 includes the extra chair, the audio visual, the pre-setup, etc., all that kind of stuff.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Valerie asks, are we still able to get a quote without the AV? Absolutely. AV is an add-on, regardless of how you choose to work with Get Quorum. AV is absolutely optional and can be added on separately. And I think same would be with DHA, is that they probably have a cost for a fully virtual and then a separate cost for hybrid. Nancy, have I got that correct?
Exactly. That 1,000 to 2,000 is the add-on cost. So we take the standard meeting cost, whether virtual or in person, et cetera, and then we add on that additional cost.
Okay, Wade Kirkpatrick, I will refer you directly to DHA after the meeting to get in touch with them. Mark, if you could make a note of that so that we can link them up. So
It's
Mark
okay.
will-
We Wade, feel free to reach out. No problem.
Hey, Wade, you're taken care of, Wade. All right. James Green as well will give you a more detailed quote directly for 80 person. Jim or JM Morin asks, includes setup and tear down. Yes, MCR comes, sets up, takes it home with them. Likewise with DHA, all that stuff is taken care of. So boards and property managers, you just worry about that one owner that's going to show up and hijack. James Green, I think we've answered your question on how much the tech setup cost, more cost questions from Paul. So I'm just going through the questions here, everybody. Armand, I think we've got that question answered. What would be a rough estimate cost for the full package from Get Quorum for hybrid? It's the base fee for Get Quorum, which can be as low as $1,000. Can go way up based on the size of your condo, and then the AV setup at this time is $1,200 on top of that. Okay, Naki Asan asks, how do you ensure equal participation in a virtual meeting if some board members want to take advantage and exclude that meeting hijacker and don't allow them to speak? How do you ensure equal participation in a virtual meeting if some board members want to take advantage and exclude that meeting hijacker and don't allow them to speak? Nancy,
Sure.
I toss it over to you because I
Sure.
think you're better suited here.
I think, yeah, you need a strong meeting chair on both sides to make sure that you have a good discussion with your board in advance about the importance of ensuring that everybody has equal participation in the meeting and how to navigate your hijacker, right? Every hijacker has a little bit of a different approach and a little bit of a different personality. So both your virtual and your live chairs just have to be ready for that personality type and how you can navigate them through the meeting, as well as making sure the board understands the importance of letting that person have a certain amount of time to speak, but when to rein that hijacker in. It's going to be a little bit of a different approach, whether it's virtual or online. So you're going to want to have your two chairs, or whoever, if you're doing the one chair approach, making sure that you have that discussion with your board in advance on how you're going to deal with that hijacker.
Thank you, Nancy. Can MCR provide solutions to boards so that the corporation can choose the equipment? And is it recommended to always rent the AV equipment? Yes, MCR can customize for you. We've got a base package that's a great offering, but if you want multiple cameras and full-blown production, I'm sure that they will accommodate that. Yes, we will be sharing. So Mark asks, will we be sharing the presentation? Mark, are we sharing the presentation? Yes, we are sharing the presentation. Mark. Heather Francis asked, this is a good one. Has Get Quorum had to deal with any challenges to vote counts and the kind of records that are being kept with an owner questioning the vote tabulations and auditing of these votes? Yes, as I've said, the reality is a small percentage of AGMs will be contested. It isn't necessarily a reflection of Get Quorum or the chair or the technology. All sorts of things can bleed into AGMs. And so Get Quorum is actually considered an expert witness in the Ontario Superior Court. As we've been brought into a couple court cases, we've testified in front of the tribunal, all sorts of stuff. So yes, we like to think we are as close to bulletproof as we can possibly be with respect to our record keeping, as that is our primary goal, to make sure that our customers are always protected from an integrity perspective and that our election results are defensible.
Ben, can I pop
Um,
in too? Just one of the benefits
please.
too of this platform is you can also customize the access to the platform. I know that there are some times where owners want to make sure, well, I want to make sure the board members aren't seeing the advanced voting or the advanced results, et cetera, et cetera. And that is one of the big benefits of using the online platform, is to make sure that only certain people do have access to that information. So you can make sure that your voting is properly regulated leading up to that meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Got an in-person question here. Hang on.
Okay, so I'm Ann from Provincial Property Management. I wanted to ask about a situation that could occur where somebody comes in person and they have proxies, and one of the proxies has already been given to another person, and the timing was the issue. And of course, I had to avoid the person who had the most proxies because they had canceled theirs and given it to somebody else just before the AGM. So how do you manage that kind of thing?
Sure. So I'll answer very quickly from Get Quorum's perspective because it's very cut and dry. The last most recently validly completed proxy with respect to the question, as I understand it, the last most recently properly completed proxy
Right.
is the one that is valid. If these proxies were electronic, each subsequent proxy will automatically revoke and invalidate prior proxies. So electronically speaking, it's actually impossible for someone to show up with more than one proxy because all prior proxies submitted by that unit would necessarily be revoked in that process. Now, if you're talking about paper proxies, then that is a whole other thing. Get Quorum does not involve itself in decisioning on the validity of paper-based proxies. That is what lawyers and chairpersons are for. So Nancy, I'll throw this one over to you. The question is, how do you figure out which proxy to take?
Sure. And it's a great question. We've actually had that scenario happen in a couple of our hybrid meetings over the past couple of years, where you had a whole bunch of proxies submitted electronically, and then you had maybe 10 of them that had to be revoked, and the proxy holder or the proxy giver changed, et cetera, et cetera. So we do make sure that we scrutinize every single one of them as they're coming in using the registration app. And then when we see that electronic proxy has been submitted and that there's the paper proxy, we have to take a very careful look, as you said, at the time, at the date, make sure everything is lining up. And it may be necessary to have the scrutineers involved as well in looking at that proxy once the scrutineers are appointed. So it can be very tricky, but we just deal with it on a case-by-case basis. And it's obviously very fact-specific when you show up as to which proxies have been revoked, when, and who the giver and the holder is, or are. Sorry. Good question.
Very good question. Okay, we've got a couple more minutes here. We'll go through as many of these questions as I can. Anything related to costs and quotes, we're going to respond to you privately after. So David Barkin asks, are all attendees expected to download the app? Can this be done in advance? Voters do not have to download anything. It's a mobile web responsive app, which just means just opens up on your web, on your smartphone. It's nothing needs to be installed. Only thing that would need to be installed would be the registration desk app, and that is for whoever is handling meeting attendance. So there's nothing to install for the general voter. How are records, Joshua Law asks, how are records related to ballots cast at the meeting retained and distributed? Does Get Quorum retain these records indefinitely, or is a copy of the ballots provided to the Condo Corporation once the meeting has concluded? So it's a sort of expansive question, but when a owner casts a proxy and or a ballot in real time, they will receive an electronic receipt via PDF in their email. So from a retention perspective, each individual voter is in receipt of a PDF that or a receipt of their ballot on their vote. From a retention perspective, there's an obligation, I believe, for 90 days for these records to be held. It's the Condo Corporation's responsibility to retain them beyond that, and Get Quorum can be of assistance in the retention area. Nancy, how do you guys treat retention of documents?
Yeah, exactly the same in the sense of when we, if so, let's say they show up to the meeting, we got a whole bunch of paper proxies. Well, throughout the meeting, if possible, or immediately the next morning, if we don't have time that evening, all the paper proxies are uploaded as well. Like they're obviously they're registered that evening, but then the hard copy proxies are uploaded into the system, so people do get a copy of their hard copy proxy electronically if we have their email address. Same thing with the ballots. We have the live ballots that we keep, and then we upload them as well as necessary. And then we also keep all of the paper copies in our office for 120 days often, just in case. I know it's only 90 days, but what if you get that request for records? We typically keep them for a good 4 months to make sure that we can meet any requests for records that might come in on day 90. We have a really good system for that. And then thereafter, they're shredded.
All right, thank you. Okay, just one more question here, and MCR will need your help. What is the minimum time frame required to have MCR on site? Someone had a meeting next week. Can you show up?
With space available, we can do a meeting within 48 hours.
All right.
That is planning, ready to go. We also do a site visit on every single job to ensure that the internet is functioning properly and can handle the details as well as a site plan.
Okay, thank you. So that was Dennis from MCR. We didn't get a chance to swing the camera around, but just so everyone is clear, a minimum of 48 hours, although we can't guarantee that, but 48 hours minimum would be appreciated. You do get a site visit beforehand to test your Wi-Fi and to have everything set up. I can't underscore how much these guys are on the ball. So I hope those that are interested take us up on this offer. And then Mark Blanchette asked about a blurb that can be provided to their board to help them decide. We will send that to you privately. So having said that, there are a bunch of questions about quotes. We'll respond to you privately. So unless there are any other questions, it is 11:01. Let's wrap it up. Nancy and Cheryl, thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without you. Amanda, you did a great job as well. And the MCR team, this went swimmingly well as far as I'm concerned. So thank you very much.
Thanks
All
for
right,
having
everybody.
us, Ben.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.